So we're back here again. Oh, my cable. It's all messed up. There we go. Hi. This is going to be episode 3 of Reading Things with a Southern Accent. The 2020 revised version. Now, a couple things I need to address. From the first 2 episodes, there have been a couple pieces of feedback. One of them being that my Southern accent sounds a bit like Will Ferrell doing George W. Bush. And I'm not going to lie, there's definitely some George W. in there. I think it's the bourbon. I do. I think it's the bourbon. So there's that. I do draw from many sources for my Southern accent inspiration. George W. is in there. I don't know if it's Will Ferrell as George W. or if it's beard is extra itchy tonight. I don't know if it's George W. himself. Also, one of the finest Southern accents that I think exists is Holly Hunter, who, if you don't know Holly Hunter, she plays the female lead in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? She's in a bunch of other movies. I can't name them off the top of my head, but she's great. Holly Hunter, she has this very curt, sort of succinct Southern accent, and it's quite lovely. If you don't know her work, go to the Googlenator and check her out. So the other inspiration actually comes from real life individuals from my own past. There's a mix of people that I have known over the years that have Southern accents. And I have a friend named Jay who lives in Boston, who is from the South, who has a really good Southern accent. It's evolved over the years, but he sort of influences me. I have a friend who lives in Louisville. His name is Brent. He's a doctor. He has a very different kind of Southern accent, but still a Southern accent. So I work all of these kind of things together, and they all sort of amalgamate up here, and well, that's what comes out. Whether it's good or bad, I can't tell you. One other person comes to mind is a friend of mine named Dwight Moody, who was my youth pastor, who was the man who married my wife and I, who has a very strong Texas accent. So all these things go in my head. They all just sort of spin around up in there, and then they try to come out. So second thing I want to address from the last 2 nights is I was given notes that my accent was dropping in and out in last night's reading, which I don't deny because, as I said in the first episode of this revived version of the Reading Things with a Southern Accent, I haven't done this in a while. I haven't worked on the Southern accent, so I'm processing as we go. And here's the thing. I can talk with a Southern accent, and I can get real good in a conversation. I can really talk to you. You know, I can do it. It just keeps going. I can start talking in the Southern accent, and it's fine. I can say fine. I can say yonder. I can say y'all. All these things, I can talk in a Southern accent. If I start getting into especially if I've had a couple of drinks, I can really get going in a Southern accent. Here's where I think the drop-off happens. I'm reading from a book, and I'm reading from the page, and I think from the page into the processing centers in the brain, then coming out of the mouth, there's a breakdown. And I think there's just a little bit too much going on for this old noggin to really, really sort of like grab hold of everything as it happens. And the resulting result from last night was the accent dropping out as I read. So we'll work on that. That's a process that is ongoing, and we're trying to figure out as I go. The third thing I want to say before I get into the text tonight is the first episode I put out on Facebook and the IGTV only because I didn't have my YouTube access. Excuse me. That's a bit of a snort there. That episode received about 3 times as many views as the one I put out last night, which I put on the YouTube as the initial hosting platform, and then I linked it over to the Facebook, and then I put it on the IGTV. The IGTV actually is getting more views than the YouTube, which is linked through the Facebook. So my question here is, should I just go straight to the Facebook, make it public, and then see where that goes, or is the YouTube the better platform? What do you think? Drop a little comment wherever those comments go. I see people doing this on the internet, like put a comment here or look over here. Tell me what you think. Was it just that the initial episode was people are like, click, I have no idea what this is, and they watched it for a moment and they were like, oh, this is garbage. In episode 2, they never even clicked on to see. I don't know. I don't have that kind of insight. So those are the quick sort of utilitarian housekeeping items that we needed to address. Yeah, I think that's it for now. This set of reading things with a Southern accent is themed Roald Dahl books. Roald Dahl is an author. He wrote a lot of children's books. He did James and the Giant Peach. He did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The book we're going to read tonight is the BFG. Whew, dang it. I was going to get that right this time, and I didn't. The BFG, which stands for the Big Friendly Giant. If you don't know the story of the BFG, it was turned into a movie. It was okay. The story of the BFG is about a big friendly giant who befriends a young lady named Sophie. All of this set in England. I don't know exactly the time period. That's neither here nor there. So the BFG. Now again, remember, as I stated just a moment ago, there's something that happens from the page to the mouth up here. Accent gets kind of wonky. I'm gonna work on this. You got to get the whiskey out of the mustache before you start talking. Maybe it's the whiskey. I don't know. Here we go. The BFG, page 25. The giant picked up the trembling Sophie with one hand and carried her across the cave and put her on the table. Now, he really is going to eat me, Sophie thought. The giant sat down and stared hard at Sophie. He had truly enormous ears. Each one was as big as the wheel of a truck, and he seemed to be able to move them inwards and outwards from his head as he wished. I is hungry. So here's, the giant says weird things. So this is going to be weird and interesting. Cold read here, haven't gone through this. The giant speaks a strange language. He says things like whiz popping and frobscottle and I wish I could remember. What are the big fruits called? Snozcumbers. Snozcumbers, whiz popping, frobscottle. If you don't know what whiz popping is, then Google Roald Dahl or BFG and whiz popping. You'll find out. But this is going to be interesting. I'll start over. Not totally over, but I'll start over. I is hungry. So this is not how giants speak, but this is how the southern accent is going to happen. I is hungry, the giant boomed. He grinned, showing massive square teeth. The teeth were very white and very square, and they sat in his mouth like huge slices of white bread. But please don't eat me, Sophie stammered. The giant let out a bellow of laughter. Just because I is a giant, you think I am man-gobbling cannibal? He shouted. You is about right. Giants is all canny-bully and murderful, and they does gobble up human beings. We is in giant country now. Giants is everywhere around. Out there, us has the famous bone-crunching giant. Bone-crunching giant crunches up 2 wopsy whiffling human beings for supper every night. Noise is ear-bursting. Noise of crunching bones goes crackety-crack for miles around. Ouch, Sophie said. Bone-crunching giant only gobbles human beings from turkey, the giant said. Every night, Bone Cruncher is galloping off to Turkey to gobble Turks. Sophie's sense of patriotism was suddenly so bruised by this remark that she became quite angry. Why Turks? She blurted out. What's wrong with the English? Bone Crunching Giant says Turks is tasting ever so much juicier and more scrum-diddly-umptious. Bone Cruncher says Turkish human beings has a glamourly flavor. He says Turks from Turkey is tasting of turkey. I suppose they would, Sophie said. Of course they would, the giant shouted. Every human being is diddly and different. Some is scrum-diddly-umptious and some is ucky slush. Greeks is all full of ucky slush. No giant is eating Greeks ever. Why not? Sophie asked. Greeks from Greece is all tasting greasy, the giant said. I imagine that's possible too, Sophie said. She was wondering with a bit of a tremble what all this talking about eating people was leading up to. Whatever happened, she simply must play along with this peculiar giant and smile at his jokes. But were they jokes? Perhaps the great brute was just working up an appetite by talking about food. As I am saying, the giant went on, all human beings is having different flavors. Human beings from Panama is tasting very strong of hats. Why hats? Sophie said. You is not very clever, the giant said, moving his great ears in and out. I thought all human beings is full of brains, but your head is emptier than a bundoggle. Do you like vegetables? Sophie asked, hoping to steer the conversation toward a slightly less dangerous kind of food. You was trying to change the subject, the giant said sternly. We was having an interesting babblement about the taste of human being. Of the human being. The human being is not a vegetable. Oh, but the bean is a vegetable, Sophie said. Not the human being, the giant said. The human being has 2 legs, and a vegetable has no legs at all. Sophie didn't argue anymore. The last thing she wanted to do was to make the giant cross. And there we have some nonsensical words from Roald Dahl and the BFG. If you don't know anything about the BFG, it's a good book, good story. I recommend it. On a closing note, where am I going to put this? This evening, I was at the grocery store earlier. I was going to buy buns because we didn't have any buns and it was time to buy some buns because we're going to make some hamburgers. And people at this time, this day and age, this current society we are in the coronavirus COVID-19 lockdown, they don't even make eye contact. I'm walking past people and I'm trying to keep my distance in the grocery store. People won't even make eye contact. Don't say hi. Don't look at you and go, nothing. They're just keeping their heads down, going straight. I understand social distancing. I understand let's keep our distance. I understand let's not spread the virus. But for crying out loud, make eye contact. Smile. We're all in this together. I'm there buying things. You're there buying things. Of course, we don't want to go crazy with it, but let's be nice. Let's be nice to each other. Let's nod. Let's acknowledge the fact that you and I are in a grocery store at the same time and we're trying our best to not mix each other's airspace. And wash your hands. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.